All right, moving on to long ball number 2 of the day. More Major League Soccer transfers. Probably the biggest one on the list. Muller to Vancouver Whitecaps. We haven't gotten a chance to talk about that. He's debuting maybe in a week or so, but this one surprised me. I was on vacation. That even broke through the vacation force field. But did anyone see that coming behind the scenes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously this one is interesting because Vancouver has never made a move like this. This is new for them. You know, LAFC has had Gareth Bale and they had Olivier Giroud and they had, they've had great players before. Yeah, so that is not great players, famous European players before. The DP in the style of David Beckham or in the style of Zlatan Ibrahimovic or whatever you want to say. This one is something Vancouver's never done before. Now, I think there's also some questions over how he fits into their system, right? Just exactly what that looks like. He is famous for playing as sort of an off striker and you could argue he can just line up as a 10 and maybe play, but he also is a goal scoring player. I'm fascinated by this. I don't want to make any prejudgments. Like, I don't want to go, oh, this is going to work or this isn't going to work. I don't know. And Jesper Sorensen has done an incredible job with Vancouver this season to keep them in the mix here. And I think they played to a 1-1 draw this weekend, which was a little disappointing for them. But I think, in terms of what he means, it's very different from what Son means to LAFC in the sense that, okay.
Vancouver lost, by the way.
Vancouver lost. My apologies. Vancouver lost. I remember watching the highlights this morning. There's lots of MLS that happens. My apologies. So Vancouver lost 2-1 to the Quakes. All right, controversially lost 2-1 to the Quakes. No, I don't remember. Yeah. And they had a red card in that game that didn't help them. That Thomas Müller, he will sell some shirts. He will. He'll get some people out. But it's not going to be nearly the kind of impact that Son can have in LA. It doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means you are kind of taking it in a different context. And I think it's going to be much more about what Mueller does on the field for the Caps in a season that looks like it has championship potential for a team that has never really been at that level, Rob, right? I mean, they've kind of been around the playoffs. They've been in the playoffs. They made some pushes a couple of times, but always felt like they were punching above their weight rather than sort of having the horses necessary to win a title. And you add Thomas Müller to a team that's got Brian White, one of the best goal scorers in the league, and Sebastian Berhalter, and we've talked about this. Now, you have outgoings, right? Pedro Vite leaving changed their midfield a little bit, but they still have Kubas. They still have, Tristan Blackman, who's been a very good center back in this league. Who leaves? I mean, who sits? Because Emmanuel Sabi and Jaden Nelson have both been pretty good this year as well. That's a question. So I'm just sort of like, oh, how is this going to do? How is this going to work? And this is important to point out as well, right? LAFC spent $26 million to get Son out of his contract. Thomas Müller was on a free. His Bayern contract was over. He was looking for a new adventure. He gets to go to British Columbia and do all that.
Yeah, that price tag, we kind of maybe overlooked. LAFC taking a big gamble on a plus 30 player coming in and spending, real dollar smackaroos for that.
Yeah. I saw I can't remember now. I should have brought it up for show and tell, but I saw somebody post a chart. Maybe it was a transfer market thing. They love to do the graphics. The most expensive 33-year-old players in history in terms of transfers, and I believe Son is number 3 on that list. Now, number 1 is Cristiano Ronaldo, and his transfer was like 100 and something million. So, he's the outlier here. But Son, I believe Son cost more than all but 2 other 33-year-old players, which that says a lot about, again, LAFC's taking a risk. They're probably not getting him if they don't spend that money, right? Spurs isn't going to let him walk if he's got a contract and they think he can still be contributing to them. So, that is part of it too, right? Whereas Vancouver is saying, hey, here's a player available. All we got to do is recruit him and convince him that Vancouver is a place he should play some soccer.
And is Thomas Müller adaptable enough to, probably more adaptable, has more in his skill set to fit where he's needed, rather than Son is like, does his thing and plays his way, and maybe some shifting around has to be done. But would Mueller, I mean, he's like the space finder, right? I think he would maybe adapt himself to where, I feel like he's got the soccer IQ to find the place where the team needs him rather than having
I think that is very possible. that, yeah, I mean, but again, there's this thing that happens sometimes with DP players like a Muller in MLS, where they played one particular kind of position their entire career, and then they come here on a DP deal, and they're clearly better or more accomplished than everybody else in the team. So you end up shifting them positionally, and are you getting the best out of them in that case? That's a question. Now here, I did find the graphics. I'm going to pull it up here. These are the most expensive 33-year-old players in history: Cristiano Ronaldo from Real Madrid to Juventus, Robert Lewandowski from Bayern Munich to Barcelona, and then Son. And that's it. You know, again, it's a significant drop. Like, it's not a ton of money. You have Jordan Henderson, who went to Saudi Arabia, I think, right?
Yep.
You have Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who went from Barcelona to Chelsea. You know, that it's just interesting that there is that whatever this means, it is interesting that Son is a player that, you know, cost a significant amount of money relative to his peers at that age.
Yeah, speaking of teams spending real money on a player, maybe taking a bit of a gamble, the Toronto FC rolling the dice and getting Djordje Mihailovic for $8 million. And he's obviously been like an above average Major League Soccer player, but is he a player to spend significant money on?
Yeah, this is a good question. All right. So I like Djordje Mihailovic a lot. He's 26 years old, right? So he is presumably in or entering his prime. He's been a pretty good player for Colorado since they brought him back from Europe. This feels as much like about Mihailovic wanting out of Colorado as it is that Toronto wants to build around him. But I can see why you would make this move if you're Toronto FC. Right? There may be some recruitment issues, right? If you're TFC, you've just burnt money, like you had a pile of money and you set it on fire with Insigne and Bernadeschi. Less so Bernadeschi than Insigne, but let's be honest, it didn't work.
No.
So what are you going to do to try to get your wheels going again? Maybe you look internally. It's a lot of money relative, you know, it's a lot of money for Djordje Mihailovic, period. A European club spending $8 million on Djordje Mihailovic at this point in his career would be like, what? Maybe a 23-year-old Djordje Mihailovic, you're like, oh, $8 million seems about right. Here is $8 million again internally. Now, you know, nuts is how Nate is describing it, one of our MK Ultras. Yeah, it feels like an overpayment. But again, I wonder if this is about Toronto FC just not having a bunch of options and they're paying a premium because of who they are and where they are in terms of their build, right? Because they are starting, again, almost starting from scratch with the Italians now out. And, you know, I want Robin Fraser and that team to figure it out because I like Robin Fraser, who Mihailovic had played for in Colorado, right? I believe that was a partnership that they liked. The other thing here is, and this is anecdotal, and I'm not going to out anybody, but I had somebody I worked with recently on the radio, somebody who would know Major League Soccer intimately from having worked in MLS in a high-level job. I'll let you just fill in the blanks there because, again, I'm not trying to out anybody. This person told me, this is insane. You could go to England and find players better than Mihailovic for half of this. Ooh. A third of this is what he said. So, but you may also be paying for this, okay, you know, knowing the league, understanding the competition that you're facing, knowing the travel, knowing the surfaces. I don't know. I know you're paying $3-4 million for that knowledge if Djordje has it, right? Maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't be paying that premium. Maybe you should be going and shaking the bushes in the championship or something. Maybe you go try to find yourself an Evander, because I don't think you would have to pay $8 million for that kind of player right now, Rob, in most cases. Maybe not. Maybe Evander as he is now. But if you're bringing a player up from South America, or as I said, this person who told me you could go to England and find somebody better than Djordje for half of this price, then are you just not willing to do that work? Do you have issues with the players not wanting to go to Toronto? Like, what is that?
Yeah, Evander definitely up there for transfer of the season at this point. But yeah, is that inflated price tag from Mihailovic maybe an almost an MLS like almost guarantee that a player that's above the level isn't necessarily, maybe he's tipped his cap at a European adventure, and so it's a proven quantity above average difference maker within MLS that isn't necessarily going to make the jump. So if you put that money in, you're not going to lose it in like a season or two.
Yeah, man, I don't know.
Or is that reductive to him?
The price tag only matters if it restricts Toronto from spending in other places to make them better, so they get the most out of Djordje Mihailovic. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
Like
it does.
if you're when people talk about, oh, they're spending all this money, this is insane. I saw plenty of European voices saying, why the hell are you spending $26 million on Son at 33 years old? But again, it's contextual. It matters where LAFC is. It matters what MLS is. It matters what city LAFC plays in. It matters whether or not Son, relative to the other competition in Major League Soccer, relative to the other players in his position, is going to be a level better. And again, we haven't seen those monies before, that money before. Right? It's just new for us to adjust to that in Major League Soccer. And I think that's the case with Djordje Mihailovic. Now, what you worry about is if you are a fan of another MLS team and you're like, well, hey, this cash for trades marketplace opens some things up for us. Maybe we should be looking internally. If a player like Djordje Mihailovic, who is a good but not great attacking midfielder in this league, right? His record is good, but I wouldn't say that, oh, he's one of the two or three best. He's not one of the 2 or 3 best attacking players at his position in the league. If that's the case, that now again, somebody said something about the English premium. Pam at 53. Is this the beginning of a U.S. player premium as in England? No. Djordje's American going to England. I don't know if that exactly works. But I do think you wonder about an internal premium on players like this.
Like an English player is going to get overpaid.
Well, no, but Djordje, if it's just sort of an established MLS name, you have to pay more because of that element. Again, but does that incentivize clubs to just the ones that are smarter with their money to go out and be good with their scouting and find the players who are going to cost them way less than Djordje does? Because again, maybe Toronto FC is just saying, screw it. We're going to get we're going to skip the line here, or we're going to put the Game Shark code in because we don't. I mean, I'm not saying Djordje will help you win the game necessarily. We're not sure about a championship coming to Toronto because of Djordje Mihailovic. But if you don't want to have to play all those levels to get a player in from England or Belgium or South America, because those are scouting resources, that there's a certain level of uncertainty there. But you can look at Djordje Mihailovic, you can look at his track record, you can say, this is a player who knows how to make it happen in Major League Soccer. So we'll just say, well, whatever, we'll pay a premium for him. Let's just do it.
To put a little bit of a bow on these MLS transfer catch-up here, Lucho Acosta and Santiago Moreno both heading to Fluminense. Is that team down in South America becoming almost like the bailout for MLS players that didn't work out?
Yeah, I mean, this is wild that market has been created, where it's like, oh, Lucho is a problem child, doesn't want to be in Dallas, already was a prima donna after the Cincinnati experience. Obviously, he helped them level up, and he was great in Cincinnati, but he's always been this guy who's just kind of never seemed settled. Remember that when he was at DC, there was a chance of him going to PSG. I believe that was during the Messi era when Messi got hurt and they were just looking for bodies at PSG. It seems wild that the European champions were eyeing Lucho Acosta about 5 or 6 years ago, whatever that was.
He never got over this, I don't think.
I don't think he ever got over it. Right. I don't think he ever did. He went to Mexico. That didn't really work out all that well. He comes back to MLS. Now he's in, again, they were like, he caused problems in Cincinnati with his attitude. I don't think Pat, why am I blanking on the manager of Cincinnati's last name right now? You're going to help me out with that.
Man, there's been a few.
Pat Noonan was like, I don't want to mess with this. Pat Noonan, very no nonsense kind of guy. And so they get rid of him. They sell him to Dallas with this new, again, cash for trades marketplace. I think it was a wild and irresponsible decision on Dallas's part because they are in a rebuild. They've got a first-time MLS manager. Their stadium is under construction. I mean, they're literally rebuilding the stadium in Dallas.
in all ways.
And they didn't have a team that was going to contend for anything this year. And what you do, you put a great MLS player into your team, but if you do not have the pieces around him to take advantage, you're only going to frustrate him with the level of play and the lack of success. And sure enough, here we are. And he goes off to Fluminense. Now, Santi Moreno's a different story because Portland has actually been pretty decent this year. That looked like they might be pushing for something. You could maybe unpack them a bit and wonder if they have the goods. But Moreno, no showing League's Cup game last week or whatever that was, basically forcing his way out. Fluminense, they upped the deal to get it done. They upped the number, and Portland's finally like, okay, whatever. Get out of here, Santi.
Yeah. Interesting times indeed, and just interesting new avenues of transfers inbound and outbound for